there, my name is Marley Bird and this is the Yarnspirations YouTube channel. In this video, I will be showing you how to make a knit preemie hat. This is a free pattern available at yarnspirations.com. I've put a link in the video description box right down there below. Go ahead and download that free pattern, gather your materials, and follow along with me as we make a preemie hat together. When you download the pattern, you'll notice you get a crochet version and a knit version. Both versions are rated for the beginner, but I will tell you for the knit version, you are required to use double pointed needles. Those are these things right here. The instructions are written for either a lightweight yarn or a medium weight yarn. And as you're following the instructions, the number outside of the parentheses refers to the lightweight yarn. The number inside the parentheses refers to a medium weight yarn. Along with the double pointed needles, you will need some stitch markers, a tapestry needle, and a good pair of scissors along with your free pattern. For this video, I will be using some medium weight yarn, so I'll be using the numbers inside of the parentheses, but you can use a lightweight yarn should you choose, just follow the different numbers. When I'm working with double pointed needles, I prefer to use the long tail cast on, so I will be doing that for this hat. If you have a different cast on you prefer, feel free to use that instead. Place your slip knot on the smaller of the two sets of double pointed needles and cast on a total of 16 stitches onto that one needle. Once you get your 16 stitches cast on, go ahead and grab the next needle and cast on 16 stitches onto that needle. Once you have all the stitches on the second needle, go ahead and grab one more needle and place 16 stitches on that needle. By the end of this row, if you're using the worsted weight yarn, you will have 48 stitches total. If you are using a lightweight yarn, you will have 60 stitches total. Once you get all of the stitches placed on 3 different needles, it's now time to prepare your needles so that we can work in the rounds. You'll notice I am joining up the first stitch we cast on, which was our slip stitch, up to the last stitch we cast on. I want to make sure that I don't have any crossovers at the corners and all of my edges are nice and neat and nothing's twisted. As I grab my needles to begin working with them, I'm going to set them down so we can take a look here. I will be using a 4th needle to knit into the stitch that we first started with and use the yarn from the last stitch we worked. So I like to make sure my yarn is inside of this triangle that we've created. Just make sure you don't accidentally knit with your tail, because that's frustrating. When you go to pick up your needles, make sure that the point where you're going to be knitting off of is closest to you. And I like to make sure that I have a good tension on the yarn, and the needle that has the yarn attached to it still, I have it butted up real nice and neat underneath the needle I'm getting ready to knit off of. So I have this needle here I will be knitting onto. I will go into my first stitch that I put on the needles, yarn over, and then pull that stitch out. And then let that stitch jump off. So that was a knit 1. I will do that again, go into the next stitch, yarn over, come out and off. Now I need to purl, so I bring my yarn forward and I will purl 1 stitch and then purl the next stitch. Bring my yarn back and then knit 1 stitch, knit the next stitch. Bring my yarn forward, purl 1 stitch, and purl the next stitch. So on and so forth. I will repeat the knit 2, purl 2 ribbing, that's what we are creating, all the way around my needles. When I get to the end of one needle, I will simply transition over to the next needle. I'll show you how that is done. When I purl these 2, now all my stitches are on the needle I was knitting onto. I have nothing left on this one. So I rotate my work clockwise. For me, I always make sure, again, I make sure this needle is underneath the one I'm getting ready to knit off of, and I'm back to where I started. So I start my repeat again because I finished with 2 purls. I start off with knit 2 and purl 2. And I'm going to keep doing that all the way around. When you come to the end of the row, you'll finish with a purl 2. You will rotate your work, and you'll know it's the end of the row because your tail, if you've done the long tail cast on, is attached to that last stitch that you just finished working. We will continue working in this 2x2 ribbing, working round and around and around until this portion of the hat measures 2.5 inches. Once the ribbing portion of your sock measures about 2.5 inches, that is when we will begin to transition our stitches to stockinette stitch, and we will transfer over to larger needles. So these were my size 4 US needles, and these are my size 6 US needles. So all I do is grab one of my size 6 needles and continue on. But this time, I'm just going to knit on all of the needles into every stitch all the way around. And as I knit round and round and round and round, that will create a stockinette stitch. I will do that until the hat measures 5 inches from the beginning. So this is rather simple. When I get to the end of the needle here, now all of my stitches are on my size 6 US needle. I can drop my size 4, grab the next US 6, turn my work clockwise, and continue. When you're done with the round, all of your stitches will now be on the larger needles, and you carry on with your 4th needle of the larger size in stockinette. And again, stockinette in the round is just knitting every stitch. And we will do this until the whole piece measures 5 inches from the cast on row. Once your stockinette measures about 5 inches from the beginning, you're then ready to begin shaping for the top. Shaping for the top has us do some decreases, and those decreases are worked right next to markers. So we will work one more round, and when we work the desired number of stitches on our needle, we will place a marker. If you're using the lighter weight yarn, it'll be between stitch number 10 and 11. If you're using the medium weight yarn, it'll be between stitch 8 and 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I will take a marker at this point, place it on my needle, and then go ahead and knit to the end of the needle. I will do that on the next 2 needles as well. Once all your markers are placed, it's time to begin what would be called the next round of the shaping. So on this round, we begin on our first needle. We work a knit 2 together. So you don't go into the first stitch, you start off with the second one. You go into the second one and then through the first one. You will knit those 2 stitches together, and that's called a knit 2 together. Now I will knit to the marker, slip my marker, work another knit 2 together, and then knit to the end of this needle. I repeat all of that for the next 2 needles as well. So here at the start, I begin with a knit 2 together, knit to my marker, slip my marker, work a knit 2 together, and then knit to the end of the needle. We have now decreased 2 stitches on each of the needles. The following round is just like that round. We will decrease 2 stitches again. We start off with a knit 2 together at the start of the needle, knit to the marker, slip your marker, knit 2 together, and then knit to the end of the needle. When you reach the end of this round, the following round is simply knit. So we will knit all the way around. When you come to your marker, simply slip it to the needle and continue on. Once you have finished that last round of knit, you will repeat the last 3 rounds 2 times if you're working with the lightweight yarn, 1 time if you're working with the worsted weight yarn. Then you'll repeat 2 more rounds of decreases. At that point, you're left with 4 stitches on all of the needles. You will cut your yarn, leaving at least 8 inches. For me, I like to leave it always a little bit longer. I would rather have too much tail than not enough. Once you have your yarn cut, go ahead and thread your tail onto a tapestry needle. Then what we will do is take your tapestry needle and starting with the first needle you would be working into, go into that stitch as if to knit, just like that, and then let it come off the needle and pull your yarn through. Go into it as if to knit, and then off and pull your yarn through. When you get to your marker, simply remove it and continue on until you're done with all of the stitches on one needle. You can set that needle down, rotate, and then do it to the next. Once all of the stitches are removed from the needle and the yarn has been pulled through securely, what you will do is take the tail that you just pulled through and give it a pull like a drawstring. This will close the top of the hat, really nice and neat. Take your yarn and stick it right down the center of the hat to the inside. Turn your hat inside out, pull that yarn through. Again, give it a nice pull. Now I've pulled it so close that you can't even see the hole there, which is great. And then you want to take your tapestry needle and begin to weave it back and forth through these stitches right up here at the top so that it is woven in nice and snug and that drawstring won't come undone. Okay, so I'm going back and forth and you'll notice my hand is on the inside of the hat, making sure my tail doesn't go through to the right side so I'm not getting any sort of a stitch that I don't want over there on that side. I'm just going through the stitches here, weaving my tail back and forth. Once it's all woven in nice and snug, you can take your scissors, snip that tail off, remove your stitch or your tapestry needle, come down here to your tail from the start, and you will thread that onto your tapestry needle. And here's the trick with this one. So bring your hat back right side out. And with this particular hat, we're meant to fold up our ribbing halfway. So we're going to fold up our ribbing halfway just like so. Therefore, when we weave in this portion of our tail, so this one here, we want to make sure it's not on the inside there. It will look like what would be called the outside for the rest of the hat, but because this is where the fold happens, and I am just going to thread it back and forth, or not back and forth, I'm just rotating it right down this ribbing section, and then I'm going to go back up the other side. I'm just going up the legs of that rib, making it very simple. when I come back down here, I'm almost done. I like to just thread it one more time, just up. All of those just straight up. Give it a pull. Snip your tail. Now, when you fold this, your tail is hidden, nice and neat. The top of your hat looks very pretty with that nice swirl. And you have this beautiful, well done preemie hat that you are ready to gift to a family in need, to a hospital, wherever you choose. And now you know how to make a knit preemie hat. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. I'm Marley Bird for the Yarnspirations YouTube channel. Bye.